Now that you've seen the data collected, we're ready to move on to graphing that data and analyzing it using our graph. So, this was the information we calculated or we collected when you saw me actually put the drops onto the penny. Before we can move on, we need to find the average. So let me pull up my handy dandy calculator and find the average of hand soap and then the average for water. This is something you need to be familiar with doing throughout this entire 7th grade course, because every time you run a lab, if you're collecting multiple trials of data, the only accurate way to compare those trials is to find the average. This is basically like finding the middle number. You've done this in math class when you find the mean. It's the same thing. So to find the average number of drops for hand soap, we need to add up our 3 trials, 27 plus 26 plus 25, and then we need to divide by the number of trials, which was 3. So 78 divided by 3 gives you an average of 26 drops. To do the same thing for water, we add 21 plus 23 plus 32 and divide by the number of trials, and you see we get 25.3 drops. Now, since you can't have 0.3 of a drop, you can't actually physically drop that much, you round to the nearest whole number. In this case, that would be 25. So just by looking at the averages here, we can tell that hand soap held slightly more water, or slightly more number of drops than water, but not very significantly more. Next, we move on to graphing. In order to graph, you need to open up an Excel file. I'm going to pull this over to the side and pull my Excel file over to this side so you can see what I'm doing. To set up your graph, you have your trials, trial 1, trial 2, trial 3, and the average, and then you have your 2 categories that we tested, hand soap and water. You can fill in your data for both categories. Oops. Including your averages, and now you're ready to make your graph. Let's look at just the Excel file now. To graph this data, you need to go to Insert, and then over here you see a variety of charts that you can insert. You need to choose the column chart, and you're going to choose the first 2D column. Right here you can see that it makes a chart where you have each individual trial on the bottom, and the average is our very last set of columns. However, let's make this a little bigger. However, what I want to see is hand soap on this side, water on this side. So in order to do that, you come up here to your chart tools, and where it says switch row and column, you just click that button once. And now you can see my axis labels have changed. We have the hand soap data and the water data. What do you notice when you're looking at this? You've got one bar in water that kind of stood out among the rest. It kind of was a little bit off, which is why we find the average. Okay, after showing that, I just wanted to show you that you could do that. I'll go back to our original data. Hand soap is in blue, water is in red, and you can see here that the average of hand soap was just slightly larger than the average for water. Now we need to add some final pieces. In our scientific method PowerPoint, I gave you the information that you needed to include in your graph. So let's make sure we have all of these. Again, we're looking at chart tools. All of these other things refer to other parts of an Excel spreadsheet, so you need to stay in chart tools. Under layout, if you click layout and then come over here to chart title, you can make a title for this chart. Double click or highlight in order to change the title. We want to call this the effects of hand soap on the number of drops held on a penny. Okay. Then we need our axis titles. The primary horizontal axis is your x-axis, and we want the title to go below. This is trial and average. And for our vertical axis, I usually choose rotated title. This is number of drops. Okay. You can see we already have a key, and the key is in color. That's part of the grade for this particular investigation. And that's all you need to do in order to turn in this assignment. The interval is already chosen for you, which is a nice thing about Excel. So you don't have to worry about choosing the proper interval since it's already done for you. Okay, moving on. In order to get credit for your graph, however, you need to go into Excel and do this exact same thing and then copy and paste this graph into your Word file. Here's how to copy and paste. If you select the graph so that you see there's a thick line around it and there's no individual portion of the graph which has a box around it, just click somewhere in the white space. Right click and choose copy. Go back to your Word document. Let's make this full screen. And put your cursor right under where it says Analyzing Data. Right click again and choose Paste. And in a moment, my graph should appear. There we go. In order to get credit, you're going to have to do the same thing. You're going to have to make the graph, follow those directions, copy and paste that graph into your Word document before you submit it to me. If you would prefer the graph to show 4 bars for water and 4 bars for hand soap, that's fine. You can show it that way or you can show it this way. Either one is fine. In our next assignment, we will work on the conclusion for this particular lab. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me.